the selling is more or less done now.
Yes, there is some slow but quiet reform happening in the public sector bank space. I mean, if men like Sumit Bose and Balachandran were to become chairman of these public sector banks, I would expect something positive from these kinds of moves. But Sanjay, what about the FMCG space? I mean, we just were discussing about the Emami purchase of Kesh King. There are these pockets of FMCG stocks that have actually shown a decent amount of value and volume growth over the past year, which would have been difficult for them. Are there any nuggets in the mid-cap space that's attracting your eye?
I think there are many, because, you know, this whole space is changing. Why? Because you need to be focused on fleet-footed players. You know, the bigger players, I'm not saying, you know, there is no market for bigger players. There's no market in my portfolio for the bigger players like a Nestle or a, you know, a Unilever, or, you know. But I think a lot of these second-rung players who play in tier 2, tier 3 segments of the market in the lower price points are actually quietly and stealthily, you know, building market share and improving their margins. They're all ultra-conservative and, you know, really family-managed companies, even if they're probably listed. So I think that's where the opportunity is. Obviously, Emami is one of them. And we've seen the story of Dabur panning out in the last 10, 15 years. You know, no one thought Dabur would be a challenger to the bigger players, but the way Dabur came on and now it comes in the big league. So I think a similar thing one would find in a lot of other companies where one can go and look at and buy and study them carefully and see what their market shares are. But of course, they would still be under the cloud because, you know, if you're going to live with this issue of rural consumption, monsoon and these kind of problems, next 2-3 months, you would see a problem with the FMCG sector. People would wait and watch. Of course, you know, taxation, GST uncertainty, those kind of things are also going to play on them a lot. So maybe you do get a better time to buy them, or maybe you may have to wait out a little. The price may not fall, so you may get an opportunity to buy them a little later.
Do you think the story in the auto sector has played out, at least for the near term? I mean, things have been sluggish, but stocks have moved up a lot. Do you think the time has come to move autos to the back burner now?
I wouldn't say move them to the back burner, but, you know, I would be equal weight as far as my portfolio is concerned, because I can't have a portfolio without having an exposure to the auto sector. But would I want to increase at the current levels? Would I want to increase them in case they fall with the market right now? If the market were to fall 200, 300 points? No, I don't think so. I think there are better pockets there where I would like to be overweight. But would I not want them in my portfolio? No, that's not the case. I would want them. I would want an allocation in them because they're not only a play on the entire rural consumption theory, but they're actually a play on the entire growth story of India. You know, whether it's aspirational or otherwise. So therefore, I would want them in my portfolio, but I wouldn't be overweight, to cut a long story short.
Okay, and the big monsoon story. Sanjay, you're a seasoned player of many a drought and flood cycles in the markets and in the economy. How much should one give weightage to it, and how should a stock market investor approach this impending phenomenon?
You know, it's very difficult to game, Lata, because, you know, monsoon's got to do with the distribution factor, how well it goes across the country, which are the belts that are impacted. Even right now, there are two views. If you look at the SkyMet and the IMD view, you know, we've also had years, in fact, just yesterday the governor reminded us, we've also had years where monsoon has been below normal or below the acceptable level, but we've still had good growth. We maintained good growth. You know, so I'm confident about one thing, that if there is one period where we can manage with a drought, if we have to live with a drought and we are compelled to live with a drought because it's a natural phenomenon, it's this period. It's because the leadership that we have, both political as well as what we have in the RBI, they cannot be a better combination. I think I have no doubt about the fact that what the Narendra Modi government will get down to it, if we have to get down to it and get going, as we've seen it reacting to some events in the last few months. Maybe those were very smaller events, the Nepal earthquake, etc. But I think there's no way that the government is going to sit back and let the, you know, rural economy suffer and then let the farmers suffer. They're definitely going to come out with aggressive contingency plans. They must be already working on it. So I'm reasonably confident that if we do have a, you know, bad patch this time because of, you know, nature God not being kind on us, or whatever scientific reason, El Nino, blah, 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 I think government would tackle it this time. So therefore, the impact would be quite muted on growth, on, on consumption, etc. So we are quite well positioned. I'm not that worried. I think it's being played out a bit too scarily, and it's come as a combination along with the RBI policy plus minus a day or two. So therefore, markets are tad nervous about it.
Fair point, Sanjay, and take your point entirely that ultimately governance, whether it's corporates or countries, is what's going to matter, and we are in a very good spot on that issue. Thank you very much for joining us and giving us your macro and your micro perspectives.